Picture the exact moment you fall asleep tonight.
Yeah.
Like that heavy feeling right behind your eyes, the room just sort of fading away.
Yeah, your breathing starts slowing down.
Right. And in that precise second, two incredibly dramatic things happen at the exact same time. On this microscopic level, the glial cells inside your brain literally shrink.
They physically change size.
Yeah. Opening up these pathways for fluid to just aggressively flush out the day's toxic buildup.
Yeah.
And at the exact same time, from a theological perspective, your consciousness, your soul, is actively detached and temporarily removed from your physical body.
It's wild to think about.
You are spending nearly a third of your life in this state of biological overhaul and spiritual departure, and most of us just call it, getting some shut-eye.
Right. I mean, it is the ultimate paradox of human biology. Because in the scientific community, the question of where your awareness actually goes when those brain waves shift, well, it's famously known as the hard problem of consciousness.
The hard problem.
Exactly. We have the sleep labs, we track rapid eye movements, we can measure the atonia, which is the muscle paralysis, but the actual mechanism of consciousness itself, that remains a profound mystery.
Which is really the core of our mission today. We're taking you on a deep dive into this super fascinating intersection where modern sleep science meets Islamic spiritual tradition.
And we have a lot to cover.
A massive stack of sources to unpack today, ranging from the latest neuroscientific studies on circadian rhythms and the glymphatic system to these really deep theological insights from the Quran, authentic hadith, and even community discussions on the terrifying phenomenon of sleep paralysis.
Because science does an extraordinary job of mapping the physical mechanics of the sleeping body. But what makes this pairing so compelling is that the Islamic tradition provides this highly detailed map of what is happening to the soul at the exact same time.
Right, like the physical and the unseen are just operating on parallel tracks. Okay, let's unpack this. Because in Islam, sleep is never framed as just this biological necessity to rest your tired muscles. It's a profound spiritual event. It's explicitly described as a minor death.
Right, and the concept of the minor death is rooted directly in the Quran. So in Surah Az-Zumar, chapter 39, verse 42, the text outlines that Allah takes the souls at the time of their death, and He takes the souls of those who do not die during their sleep.
Wow.
Yeah, and then He keeps those for whom He has decreed death and releases the others for an appointed term. I mean, the theology is very literal here.
It's not a metaphor.
Not at all. Your soul is crossing a threshold into a different realm, being held, and then returned to you upon waking.
So biologically, sleep isn't just, putting your laptop into low power mode. It's more like the IT team coming into the office after hours to defrag the hard drives, scrub the keyboards, while the primary user, which is your soul, has essentially been locked out of the building.
That's a great way to look at it.
And the mechanics of that IT team are just fascinating, because our sources detail the glymphatic system, which works by physically altering the brain's structure. Those glial cells I mentioned earlier, they shrink by up to 60%.
60%?
Yeah, it's a huge shift. And that shrinkage creates space for cerebrospinal fluid to just rush in and essentially power wash the brain.
And that power washing mechanism is so crucial because of what it's flushing out. Throughout the day, as your neurons fire and you process information, metabolic waste just builds up.
Just junk in the brain.
Right. And one of the primary culprits is this protein called amyloid beta. When the glymphatic system washes the brain, it clears out these amyloid proteins.
Which is a big deal, right?
A huge deal. The buildup of amyloid plaque is a primary biomarker for Alzheimer's disease and severe cognitive decline.
Oh, wow. So it puts the whole minor death thing in a completely different light.
Mm-hmm.
While the soul is experiencing this spiritual suspension, the physical brain is undergoing this critical, aggressive cleaning cycle. So treating sleep like it's just this frustrating hurdle that gets in the way of your productivity, it totally ignores the fact that without this nightly wash, your cognitive function just degrades rapidly.
Yeah, the physical maintenance is completely dependent on that state of unconsciousness. I mean, the glymphatic system simply does not operate at that capacity while you are awake.
But I struggle with this concept a bit when we try to apply it to daily routines, though.
How so?
Well, we constantly hear from modern sleep scientists, the Hubermans of the world, that we need uninterrupted, perfect 8-hour blocks of sleep for these biological cycles to complete.
Right, the golden 8 hours.
Yeah. So doesn't waking up at like 5 power a.m. for the Fajr prayer completely fracture that sleep architecture? Seems counterproductive to pull the plug on the IT team before the sun even comes up.
I get why you'd think that. But the idea that we need one monolithic, unbroken block of sleep in a pitch black room until the alarm goes off, that's actually a very modern assumption. Yeah. When we look at the neurology, specifically the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the narrative shifts entirely.
The suprachiasmatic nucleus, that's the brain's internal clock, right?
Exactly. It's a tiny region in the brain's hypothalamus.
Huh.
And it governs your circadian rhythm by responding directly to light signals captured by your retina.
Okay.
So when morning light hits the eye, it signals the pineal gland to halt the production of melatonin, which is the sleep hormone, and increase cortisol to wake you up.
Got it.
And studies highlighted in journals like Curious and Applied Physiology demonstrate that waking up consistently for Fajr anchors your body to natural ambient light cycles. You are catching the shift in the atmosphere right as dawn breaks.
So by waking up in that specific window, you're essentially calibrating your clock to the Earth's rotation rather than relying on some synthetic blaring alarm clock.
It sets a biological anchor for the rest of the day. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, consider the nighttime counterpart, which is the Isha prayer.
Right.
Modern routines are notoriously hostile to the suprachiasmatic nucleus. We flood our retinas with artificial blue light from our phones until the very second we try to close our eyes.
Doom scrolling in bed.
We all do it, but blue light actively suppresses melatonin because it tricks the brain into thinking it's still daytime.
Right. But the physical and meditative movements of Salah for Isha, they disrupt that digital loop.
Yes.
Because you have to put the screen down, go perform ablution, and engage in this slow, rhythmic, physical practice that naturally lowers your cortisol levels.
Exactly. The 5 daily prayers provide this built-in framework that counters the physiological stress of the modern world. You anchor the morning with natural light at Fajr, and you wind down the evening by stepping away from synthetic light at Isha.
That makes so much sense. It covers the night as a covering and the day for livelihood. But the sources also dive into the middle of the day.
Yes, the midday slump.
Right. If nighttime sleep is structured around Fajr and Isha, we still have to deal with those inevitable midday energy crashes.
Well, the tradition addresses that with the Qaylula, which is the midday power nap, typically taken around the time of the Duhur prayer.
And the anatomical advice surrounding this in the Sunnah is just wild.
It really is.
Because the prophetic tradition explicitly advises sleeping on your right side. And when you look at human anatomy, sleeping on the left side forces the heart to bear the physical weight of the right lung, which is actually significantly larger and heavier than the left lung.
Right. The asymmetry of our internal organs dictates how physical strain is distributed when we rest.
Yeah, and beyond the lungs, you have the curvature of the stomach. If you eat a meal and then lie on your left side, the full stomach places pressure on the liver,
which is the heaviest internal organ.
Exactly, and that physically delays the emptying of gastric contents. The fact that this specific postural advice was standard practice 14 centuries ago, entirely optimizing gastric and cardiovascular function during a nap, is incredible.
It is, and the long-term cardiovascular benefits of that specific daytime rest are staggering.
I bet.
There was this massive 5-year study conducted by the University Hospital of Lausanne in Switzerland They tracked over 3,400 individuals.
That's a huge sample size.
Yeah, and the researchers found that subjects who took a daytime nap just once or twice a week experienced a significant drop in the risk of incident cardiovascular events.
Like heart attacks and strokes.
Exactly. The risk profiles measurably decreased just by incorporating a brief midday rest. Organizations like NASA actually utilize similar protocols for their astronauts.
Ah.
Yeah, because the rapid clearance of adenosine, which is the chemical that makes you feel sleepy, drastically improves reaction times.
It totally reframes the guilt so many people feel about resting. Taking a 20-minute nap after Duhr on a Sunday isn't laziness,
Yeah.
It is a restorative, medically validated, and spiritually encouraged life hack.
Totally. So we have mapped the physical postures, the circadian light anchors, and the neurological washing of the brain. But this brings us to the inherent vulnerability of the sleep state itself.
Right. Because when the minor death happens, your consciousness drops, your soul detaches, and you are left completely exposed.
And what's fascinating here is how the Islamic tradition prescribes active spiritual armor to counter that vulnerability.
Like what?
Specifically, the practice of sleeping with Wudhu, the physical ablution.
Okay.
According to the Hadith, if a person goes to sleep in a state of physical purity, an angel resides in their bed, actively praying for their forgiveness throughout the entire night.
Just stand guard, basically.
Yes. And furthermore, when the soul ascends during that period of minor death, the state of purity permits it to make sajda, to prostrate at the throne of Allah. But if the physical body is in a state of impurity, that spiritual proximity is denied.
Here's where it gets really interesting in our source stack. Because sometimes that vulnerability is exploited and the minor death feels terrifyingly real.
Sleep paralysis.
Yes, we pulled this really deep discussion from a Reddit community forum focused on sleep paralysis. You wake up in the middle of the night, your eyes are open, but you are completely frozen.
It's terrifying.
Very. Often people sense a heavy, suffocating presence in the room, or they see dark shadows hovering right over them.
Right. And from a neuroscientific perspective, this is a well-documented failure in the transition out of REM sleep.
The rapid eye movement phase.
Exactly. During the REM stage, when you are dreaming vividly, your brain releases neurotransmitters like GABA and glycine to actively paralyze your skeletal muscles.
Wait, it paralyzes you on purpose?
Yes, this mechanism, called atonia, is an evolutionary safeguard so you don't physically act out your dreams and injure yourself.
Oh, that makes sense.
So sleep paralysis occurs when your consciousness boots up and you open your eyes, but the chemical atonia hasn't worn off yet.
So your brain panics because you literally can't move, and
Kind
it
of.
superimposes the lingering dream imagery, like the shadows, the intruders, directly onto the physical room you're staring at.
Right, the glitch is biological. But the Islamic tradition recognizes this vulnerable, glitchy state as an intense spiritual trial.
Yet, the author of that Reddit post talked about how, out of pure terror, they used to mentally scream, curse, try to fight off the shadows or the jinn they felt in the room.
Which is a natural reaction.
Right. But the prophetic prescription for these encounters is the exact opposite of combat. Fighting the unseen in that state only feeds the panic and amplifies the psychological terror.
The tradition teaches submission and divine reliance over frustration. The Prophet instructed believers to establish a perimeter of protection before the glitch even has a chance to happen.
It's about reciting certain verses.
Exactly. Reciting Ayat al-Kursi, the verse of the throne, appoints a divine guardian over the sleeper. And blowing into the hands, reciting the protective chapters Al-Ikhlas, Al-Falaq, and An-Nas, and then physically wiping them over the body, it creates a spiritual seal.
But what if you do that and still wake up paralyzed?
The instruction is not to fight the shadow. You internally seek refuge in Allah. You rely on those verses. As the commenter on the forum experienced, when they abandoned the fight, stopped cursing, and simply recited Bismillah in their mind, the panic dissolved. Wow.
The heavy presence faded, and the terrifying paralysis naturally transitioned back into a calm, lucid dream.
You are surrendering the illusion of physical control to gain actual spiritual protection, which naturally pulls us into the most mysterious territory of all today.
Dreams.
Yes. Once the body is paralyzed and the glymphatic system is washing the brain, where is the detached soul actually spending its time?
Well, the Prophet Muhammad provided a taxonomy of the dream landscape, dividing it to 3 distinct categories.
Okay, let's go through them.
The first is hadith an-nafs, which is the internal dialogue of the soul. In modern terms, this is just your brain processing and consolidating the data of your waking life.
Like the unresolved argument from work or some random face you saw on the subway.
Exactly, or anxiety about a deadline. It's the neurological machinery organizing short-term memories into long-term storage.
It's like the background radiation of human consciousness.
Perfect way to describe it. The second category is the hum. These are the dark, disturbing nightmares that originate from Shaitan.
They serve absolutely no constructive purpose. Their only design is to unsettle the sleeper, provoke anxiety, and cause despair upon waking.
And then the sources emphasize a third category, right? The ruya salihah, which feels entirely distinct because it doesn't seem to originate from the sleeper's own memory banks or from some malicious presence.
Right. The ruya salihah is a true vision from Allah. These dreams carry profound clarity. They deliver glad tidings, severe warnings, or deep spiritual insights that resonate long after the sleeper opens their eyes.
This brings up a massive question for me about that first category, the memory processing one.
Sure.
When we dream of people, specifically loved ones who have passed away, is that just our brain playing a highlight reel of old memories? Or because the soul has detached during the minor death, is actual connection possible?
The tradition asserts that actual connection is entirely possible.
Wait, really?
Yes. Through the realm of the barzakh.
The barzakh.
Yeah, the barzakh is the metaphysical barrier. It's the intermediate state between the life of this world and the eternal afterlife. The classical scholar Ibn al-Qayyim wrote extensively on this mechanism.
What did he say?
He explained that because the souls of the living are temporarily released during sleep, they are actually capable of traversing into the barzakh. In that space, the souls of the living and the souls of the dead can meet, interact, and exchange actual information.
The source stack highlighted a historical event from the Aqeen Institute transcripts that perfectly illustrates this.
Yes, the story of Thabit ibn Qais.
Right. It involves a companion of the Prophet named Thabit. Thabit died as a martyr in the Battle of Yamama. But sometime after his death, he appeared in a dream to one of his fellow Muslim soldiers.
In the dream state.
Yes. In this dream state, Thabit's soul informed the dreamer that immediately after he had fallen on the battlefield, a specific soldier had walked by and stolen his highly valuable armor shield.
So he is transmitting data about an event that occurred after his own physical death.
Exactly. And he provided exact coordinates.
Wow.
Thabit told the dreamer that the stolen shield was hidden in a specific location in the military camp, buried under a cooking pot with a saddle thrown over it to conceal it.
That is so specific.
It is. And Thabit then gave the dreamer a directive. He said, go to the Caliph, Abu Bakr, ask him to recover the shield, sell it, and use the funds to pay off earthly debts Thabit had left behind, and to free one of his slaves.
And the most amazing part is what happened next. The companion woke up, followed the instructions from the dream, walked into the camp, and found the shield exactly where the soul of Thabit said it would be.
Hidden right beneath the cooking pot.
Right. He took the shield to Abu Bakr, recounted the interaction in the barzakh, and Abu Bakr actually executed the legal will of a deceased man based entirely on the information transmitted through a dream.
It proves that the detachment of the soul is not merely symbolic. You are brushing against an unseen reality where genuine interaction occurs.
Yes, though the sources are also very clear that we do not control this access. You cannot force a meeting in the barzakh. It is entirely by the will of Allah. And just as importantly, the tradition provides strict protocols for how to handle the inevitable bad dreams, the home, when they do occur.
The metaphor used for nightmares in the sources is just brilliant. They describe the interpretation of a bad dream as being tied to the leg of a bird.
I love that imagery. The prophet instructed that if you wake up from a terrifying nightmare, you should seek refuge in Allah, lightly spit to your left 3 times, and turn over to your other side.
And you're not supposed to talk about it, right?
Crucially, yes. You should not speak of the nightmare to anyone, nor should you seek an interpretation for it. If you obsess over the nightmare and try to unpack its dark imagery, you essentially pull it down into your reality.
But if you ignore it,
and turn to prayer, that bird takes flight. The nightmare is carried away on the wind and can cause you no harm.
So what does this all mean for us today? We started by looking at the biological imperative of sleep, the sheer necessity of shutting down. And what emerges from this deep dive is a stunning symmetry. It really is beautiful. Modern science explains the how. The glial cells shrinking to allow the glymphatic system to scrub the brain of amyloid plaque, this suprachiasmatic nucleus anchoring to the morning light of Fajr, and the cardiovascular restoration of a midday nap.
But the Islamic tradition provides the why.
Exactly. It maps the spiritual journey. Sleep is a minor death. It's an intentional vulnerability that requires the physical purity of Wudhu and the spiritual armor of recited verses. Tonight, when your head hits the pillow and those physical mechanisms trigger, you're actively releasing your soul to the unseen.
Trusting entirely that it will be returned to your body when the sun rises.
And that reality contextualizes the prophetic prayer recommended for the exact moment you open your eyes in the morning. All praise is due to Allah, who gave us life after He caused us to die, and to Him is the return.
We praise Him not just for the rest, but for the literal return of the soul from the barzakh.
If sleep is a nightly rehearsal for the minor death, then waking up every single morning is a daily rehearsal for the ultimate resurrection.
Which leaves us with a really profound question to consider.
What's that?
If your soul is departing tonight, does the state of physical purity, spiritual reliance, and peace with which you choose to close your eyes serve as a direct mirror for how you hope to leave this world forever?